So the next one that I'm going to answer is, all right, sugar. When we eat it again, is there any trick to only eating a little? It's like a drug that I seem to get hooked on very easily. This is, I think, super common and actually something I deal with myself a lot. I love sugar, and I feel like when I'm having sugar regularly, I just want it more and more and more. And so this can be really challenging. And right now you might be going through a period of abstaining. Maybe you're coming up in this Lent season and you want to abstain from sugar. I think that's awesome. I think times when we abstain or fast from things, that helps us get a little bit more control over that thing, and it doesn't end up controlling us. And so what do you do when you come back into it? One is things are going to be a little bit more sweet when you come back. And so I would probably go for things that let's say you really like sweets. I would go for something that's maybe a higher cacao dark chocolate, maybe a 70% or higher. It's not quite as sweet. And so you're going to get a little bit of that sweetness, but it's not going to be so overwhelming where it's just going to light up all the pleasure centers of your brains. Did I say brains? Brain, singular brain. If you find out it has brains, let me know. And like multiple brains. But something that elicits that excitement in your brain. Another thing is getting into the act of enjoying it and going slower. So, hey, cool, I'm going to eat sweets, awesome, but let's slow down and let's take 5 minutes to eat this piece of chocolate. And so you just get maximum satisfaction out of that little bit. That can be another little tip that you can use to kind of bring maybe sugar back into your life a little bit. I like 70% or higher cacao, and actually the individually wrapped ones is really good too, because it helps to portion size out for you. And then, like, at the end of the day, using it as a treat and not making it part of your everyday. And so you guys have heard us talk about this stuff ad nauseum, but just not having it in your environment. If you want it, cool, go out and have it. But force yourself to go out and have it. Put that little barrier, put that space in between, so you have that time to be like, nah, not worth it, or nah, it's just not, doesn't fit with what I'm doing. And like the other thing with sugar too is, it's like, sugar is not bad. Like, there's nothing like inherently wrong about sugar. It's the excess of sugar that ends up making it an issue. And the World Health Organization, I think for women, is 20 to 25 grams of sugar. That comes out to be about 6 teaspoons, I believe is what it is. If I had Alexa here, I'd ask her what the specifics are, but I think it's about 20 to 25, and men it's like 30 to 35. So, I mean, that's a little bit. Like, you can have some added sugars, and like, it can be part of like what you're doing. It's when it becomes excessive and when we don't know where it's showing up, or it's showing up on all these random places. Like, it's in our pasta sauce, and it's in this other box good thing, and it's in these other sweets, and so it starts to become excessive. And so it's just really, just being aware of where it is. And if sugar is something that just sends you off the rails, like, maybe it's something you just need to like not use, right? We all have things that just we're not successful with, and I think that's, first off, it's okay with that. And like, let's look at like an alcoholic. Is like, all right, if someone abstains from alcohol and they know that having a drink will put them down a bad path, like, they would choose just not to do it, right? Because then they don't have to go down that path. And so I don't necessarily always like to put like alcohol and sugar in the same like comparison, but like, I think we can for this analogy. Like, if sugar just like sends you down this like path of no return, then like, maybe it's a good idea to just like abstain from it and like be okay with that. Or play with like this idea of like, what happens if I have a little bit, and like sit with it, try slower, try 75% cacao, like play with some different strategies, and understand that if it does go the wrong way, then like it's okay. Like, just recognize it, maybe abstain from a period of time, and then come back to it. And so like, Peggy just asked a question about like trying some sugar during the challenge. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, you could if you wanted to, if that time frame, if you're in a headspace where you like feel like it would be okay. And like, what does trying some sugar mean? Is it like taking teaspoons out of like the white sugar tub and like eating it? Because like, here's the interesting thing about that, right? If I just said the only thing you can eat is sugar, like only refined white sugar out of the container, that's all you can eat, you would get probably like feel really sick about it, and B, you wouldn't just eat it without control, eat it forever. Like, that just wouldn't be the case. It's when it's really not necessarily sugar. It's what we call hyper palatable foods. So foods that have sugar and fat and salt and this combination that just makes them irresistible, right? And so sometimes it's not just sugar. So I don't think we should always like villainize sugar. It's usually the combination of sugar, it's fats, it's salt, and that combination just makes, like, just sends our pleasure signals through the roof. Because you think about most like really good desserts are usually a combination of fat, salt, and sugar, and that's what makes them really, really, really good. And so the second piece with Peggy's question was taking the hit and getting back on track immediately since I have a partner to answer to. Yeah, like, I mean, that's another thing is we can like leverage ourselves against other things. So you know that I'm going to try this and I'm going to see what happens. And I know that I can't go off the wagon because my partner is really counting on me. So right, that's a way that you can almost handcuff yourself in a way to test things and try things. Yeah, like I'm all about like finding ways to almost back ourselves into a corner so that we have to do the thing that we ultimately want to do, not the thing that like our desires or we're being driven to do. So I think that Peggy, that's actually super interesting as a way to like test it a little bit. Because I think the other thing that we forget is that at the end of the day, we're in control, right? Sugar is not this like magical substance that hijacks our body and forces us to do these things. Yes, it tastes good, and yes, it activates pleasure centers in our brain, but it is not forcing us to do things. And so I think the more you can show that you're in control and have that kind of mindset where I have the ability to change things, like you're going to be more successful in almost anything in life, whether it's with food or whether it's with relationships or whether it's with business. Like that idea of I have the control and I have the ability to do things and not just allowing all these other forces to act upon me. You can have a lot more success that way. But like it's anything. It's like we got to play with it. We got to sit with it. We got to be okay with failing at it and continue to try it and work with it. And that's something with like nutrition in general. Like this is not like just I flip the switch and all of a sudden I'm like eating the perfect diet. It's this constant state of like doing better and maybe doing a little bit worse and doing a little bit better and learning and like how do I incorporate it, creating systems that allow me to be more successful so I don't have to think about it. And so thinking about it as this journey where I'm exploring rather than like a black and white right or wrong, I think it can go a long ways in helping people to be successful in the long term. Short term, black and white helps people get great results really quickly, but long term, it doesn't necessarily always foster the best mental environment. So those are just some things to think about when it comes to sugar, because sugar isn't necessarily always the villain, right? If I were to have you eat sugar and only sugar, you would get sick of sugar, right? But it's the hyperpalatability of foods, it's the accessibility of foods, it's the systems and the habits that I have in my life right now that lead me towards those things, and examining that piece and then really trying to optimize that piece will help you to ultimately be more successful in the long term. So yeah, these are great. I love the questions. They help us to riff on things that you guys are really thinking about. And just so you guys know too, like I may be talking about this, but it doesn't mean that these aren't like things that I struggle with or things that Ashley struggles with or any of us as coaches struggle with. And so like don't take a lot of this stuff, especially with what we talk about in FF Uncensored, as like the only way or this is super easy for us or that we never have struggle moments because like sugar is something that like I kind of struggle with. Like that is something that I'm not always the most successful with. But I try and put things in my path that make it a little bit more challenging, right? Like we just don't have that stuff in the house for the most part because I know that I just am not going to be really successful with that, and that's okay. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to go to Dairy Queen or have stuff like that. I kind of fit it into everything else that I'm doing. So I think it's just at the end of the day, just being really honest with ourselves and what drives us, what motivates us, what we can get away with and what we can't get away with. So I can typically get away with more junk with my diet because of my body type and my metabolism and all those kind of things. So at the end of the day, it's just being really honest on who we are and what drives us, what motivates us, and kind of a little bit of what our physiology is, and then putting together the systems to allow us to be successful without having to think as much, right? And then understanding that like sucking at it is part of the process, especially early on. And even once we get better at it, we're still going to have times that we suck. So I think that's applicable to nutrition, but also to learning anything new in life. So